Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist. And today, I want to share with you some of my favorite quotes that I think can help with binge eating recovery. The thing is about quotes is that a really good quote kind of captures some kind of wisdom and truth and phrases it in a way that kind of makes you go, oh yeah. And that's the kind of reaction that I've had to all the quotes I'm going to share with you today. It's touched into something resonant in me that maybe I hadn't quite realized but had kind of been in there but not accessible to me. Good quote can also communicate a lot with very few words, and sometimes there are a lot of words out there, a lot of people talking about how to recover, and this is a way of just taking some bite-sized information and trying them on and seeing if they shift anything in you. So the first quote I want to share with you is by Patricia Smith. And Patricia says, trying to treat disordered eating by regulating food intake without addressing the underlying issues is like offering someone a handkerchief to wipe away their tears without bothering to find out why they're upset. And I love this quote because one of the places where people find themselves stuck is they are trying to fix their eating struggles by just focusing on what they're eating, by just trying to make themselves eat in a different way. And without looking at how did the relationship with food become so dysregulated to begin with, it misses an important piece of the puzzle. And you might not know what the underlying issues are. Although ones that come up again and again are things like the black and white, all or nothing thinking, beliefs that we are only acceptable and worthy if we're in a certain size body, anxiety about life, sort of existential fears and beliefs that then lead to a desire to control or a collapse into despair and using food for comfort. There's all these different themes that might arise, but without even asking yourself what could be underneath my eating struggles, finding any kind of resolution could be incredibly challenging. I think it usually comes down to something along the lines of accepting ourselves, having a better relationship with our emotions, and looking at some of our core beliefs about life and who we are. You know, just the little things. I read a lot of Janine when I was trying to recover. There weren't many other people talking about this. So I have quite a few quotes from Janine that I particularly like. She talks about how compulsion and awareness cannot coexist, because compulsion, it takes us out of awareness, it takes us out of presence. It's really difficult to be compulsive and also present. So here's one of her quotes that I like. See what you think. Janine says, compulsive eating is a way we distance ourselves from the way things are when they are not the way we want them to be. Ending the obsession with food is all about developing the capacity to stay in the moment. This one would always hit me hard. When I read this, and whenever I thought about this idea of being present, there was so much resistance to being present. I didn't want to be present. The presence was just unacceptable, which brings us nicely onto Byron Katie and her work around acceptance. And Byron Katie says, the only thing harder than accepting this is not accepting this. Just let that sit for a while, because this is one that doesn't always land with everybody, or certainly not straight away. What it's saying is that reality is how reality is. Your body is the way it is. You've eaten what you've just eaten. We cannot change that reality of whatever's gone on. So when we refuse to accept reality, but reality is how it is, we create much more suffering. Reality may not be comfortable all the time. There may even be pain in reality. But when we try to push against it, like get in this fight, that's another one of her quotes. She says, I can fight with reality and I'll only lose 100% of the time. So you won't win anyway. But you might be thinking, I can't accept this because I need the discomfort and the pain of this moment to motivate me to make things better. I understand that thinking. I relate to that thinking. The question becomes, does it actually motivate you to make things better? Because there are times when someone might go, this is unacceptable, and I'm going to stand up and do something about it. That's how we get activism. That's how we get social change, right? But if you are stuck in a compulsive cycle over and over again, and not accepting it is feeding the cycle over and over again, it's like we need to do something different. We need to change the energy around it. But I often find it's difficult to talk to people about, because it sounds a bit like I'm saying you need to accept, you should accept. If you want to get better, you must accept your body, you must accept how things are. And I want to say, no, you don't. You don't have to accept anything. The only thing that I'm offering is that if you do accept, maybe you'll suffer less. Maybe you'll feel different. Maybe you'll be able to do something different. I don't know. This is one for each person to test out for themselves. The next quote is from a guy you might have heard of. His name is Socrates, and he was quite a wise person. And he says, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on creating the new. You may have heard me say this before. I'll always say, people try to stop binge eating by trying to stop binge eating. Like, that is the method. I am just going to try really hard not to do this thing that I don't want to be doing anymore. So it's always a fight, right? It's a fight with yourself, with your urges, with your desires, with compulsion, with how you're feeling. And the more you fight with the stuff that you don't like, the more of it you seem to get, because that stuff fights back and it's just chaos. It's not getting you where you want to go. So rather than looking at recovery as you're stopping this behavior, that's what recovery is. If you can think of recovery as a creative process, it's about creating something that's less compatible with binge eating. So it might be creating a better relationship with your emotions. It might be learning how to put in healthy boundaries. It might be really thinking about how it is you want to feel and be able to interact with around food. Trying to stop binge eating doesn't work for a lot of people. Trying to focus on building a healthy relationship with food and ourselves, that, I think, is where success lies. Recovery can feel really hard when you are trying to figure out, am I making progress? It seems like one day you're doing better, another day you're back in the chaos, which makes you think the fact you were doing better just doesn't mean anything. And this sense of, am I getting better? Are things actually improving? Or am I just going ping-ponging all over the place? So this quote from C.S. Lewis is one of my favorites. You've probably heard me say it elsewhere if you listen to my podcast and other things like that. And it is the one that goes, isn't it funny how day by day nothing changes, but then you look back and everything's different? People ask me, how long did it take to recover from binge eating? Well, I was struggling with this for a decade, and I would say I felt like I was trying to recover from the moment it started. I wasn't getting anywhere because I wasn't aware of all the things that I just talked about in this video, so I was just going round in the circle, but I was trying to recover. And then in the last few years, where it was kind of like a self-development journey, more than a binge eating recovery one. That was there, and food was often the indicator of if something was going on. But rather than I have to stop binge eating, it was like, I need to figure out how I can be more present in my life and how I can feel more comfortable in my skin. And that doesn't come from changing my behavior. That comes from how I talk to myself about myself. The problem with this, when you're shifting self-talk and how you are reacting to your emotions, sometimes it can feel like nothing's really happening. Your behavior doesn't magically transform overnight. But when we gently come back to practicing the skills, the things that we are trying to do, then we keep building the new. And the new gradually comes in and takes up more space. But it's this gradual process that from one day to the next, you might not see it. But then when you look back to where you were 6 months ago, a year ago, you go, oh gosh, like I don't do that thing anymore. And I'm much more able to do this over here. So you see it when you look back, when you zoom out. When you're in the chaos, we're kind of closed in. And our focus is really narrowed. And every day feels the same. But change is happening. If you're gently coming back to things and being reminded, you'll hear concepts and then you'll forget them. That's what being a human being is. It's just this constant cycle of remembering and forgetting, remembering and forgetting. I still really like quotes, even if the Instagram algorithm doesn't anymore. So if you have any that really speak to you, that give you that feeling when you hear them, and it reminds you of something that feels really true, I would love to hear them. So pop them in the chat below. And the whole reason I do what I do, and I talk about my experience as openly and as honestly as I can, is down to what I think is summed up in my final quote that I will end with. And this is, I don't know the author of this quote, but it just goes like this. Some of the most comforting words in the universe are me too. That moment when you find out that your struggle is also someone else's struggle, that you're not alone, and that others have been down the same road. So I would just want to leave you with a message of hope. Many of us have trod this path, and there's light at the end of the tunnel.